Maoist Rebel News fans, many of you are already aware that Ross Ulbricht, the guy who created Silk Road, has been arrested and is in jail. Silk Road is the notorious online black market where basically if you had a fistful of bitcoins, you could pretty much buy any illegal thing you wanted, like human organs, primarily drugs, prostitutes, child prostitutes, guns, and a whole ton of other things. Now, this was set up to be the libertarian utopia where everybody could exchange and the government couldn't track you. Yeah, no, good job on that one. Well, the point is that dream is now over as the creator is now in jail. And one of the big questions is how exactly was he caught given the imperfect anonymity of Tor and the use of bitcoins? Well, actually, it's very simple. According to the FBI, he simply posted his Gmail account in the wrong place. And using that, they were able to track him and bring him to justice. Or injustice, depending on how you see it. Now, what I really want to talk about here is actually the libertarian concept of the black market as a means of challenging the traditional capitalist economy, or as they put it, not real capitalist economy. And also, I do want to also speak about Bitcoin itself. Now, these two issues are very important when looking at Silk Road, as these were two very, very important aspects regarding it. Now, specifically, as for Bitcoin, I don't get what's supposed to be so great about Bitcoin. One of the complaints about the traditional currency that we use right now is that it's not backed by gold, and this is supposedly a problem. The issue of the gold standard is a whole separate thing that has to be dealt with in another video. But the point of it is that libertarians say we shouldn't be using this currency and it's bad because, well, it's not gold. And if it's not gold, it's not worth anything. So a lot of them have switched to the creation of Bitcoin, which was created by a hacker. Long backstory. Long story short, it's the currency that's supposed to challenge the US dollar for trading and domestically and internationally. Now the problem is this. Bitcoin isn't actually backed by anything, no more than the US currency really is. And supposedly there are numbers on a computer that actually validate its existence and is supposed to be somehow as good as gold, which doesn't really mean anything because gold doesn't have any inherent value, nor does any currency for that matter. It only has any value so much as people want to use it, because frankly, Bitcoin is actually worth less than gold because gold does have some practical applications, like electronics. You can use it for some medical stuff, jewelry, etc. But there's more when dealing with the issue of Bitcoin itself. In other words, Bitcoin isn't just a currency. It's a massive experiment in group trust. It's also a hint of the financial system to come, and ultimately, a scam. You've probably heard of the digital cash after it was rocked by sudden changes in value. A few weeks ago, the value of Bitcoin briefly plunged to -8 cents to the dollar as hackers crashed exchanges and digitally ransacked electronic wallets to the tune of 9 million. A single victim claims that the hackers absconded with some 25,000 of his bitcoins, worth absurdly approximately 375,000 at present dollar to Bitcoin exchange rates. That's a crazy amount of money to have stolen by someone essentially copying a file from your hard drive, and that's just the beginning of what's happening in the world of Bitcoin, which combines enough hackers, monetary policy cranks, and mysterious Japanese corporations to populate a Neal Stephenson novel. Bonus points if you know who Neal Stephenson is. Well, there's a multitude of other reasons why Bitcoin is inherently worthless. One of those reasons being nobody wants it. You can't actually turn it into cash, take it to the grocery store and buy something with it, or even just take the Bitcoins themselves to the grocery store and buy anything with it. Because the Bitcoin currency works the same as any other currency. If nobody has faith in it, nobody wants it and doesn't have any value. Now, the reason why the US dollar has a value and reason why it's trusted is because it's backed by the US government, which is one of the reasons why it makes it such a valuable currency, because it is backed by something, the authority of the United States. Whether you like it or you don't. I don't particularly care for the US government, but that doesn't have anything to do with whether or not there is something substantial behind the US dollar, in that it is connected to something that is real. And while that is not gold or anything really that special, it is the authority of the United States government which gives that currency legitimacy and why people trust it. In this regard, Bitcoin is not any different than gold. If you have no faith in it and you don't want it, the currency means absolutely nothing. This is also a reason why Bitcoin is subject to such heavy speculation, just as the US dollar is, because there's no inherent value in the currency itself. Its value is only really the trust people put in it. And thus you can speculate on what it means and raise its value right through the roof. Or you could have nobody care about it and it completely crashes. That's the whole point. It's as speculative as real money is, depending on whether or not you have a definition of what real money is. Most worrisome is the opportunity for collusion. If any single person or group controlled a majority of computing power in the network, they could rewrite the transactions to take your money. Bitcoin relies on the growth of the network to outpace any single node's ability to control the bulk of processing power. But one mining collective, DeepBit, currently clears more than a third of all transactions. Already, hackers have used botnets, online networks of computers, to increase their ability to process transactions and mine bitcoins. These dynamics make watching Bitcoin a lot like watching monetary history. And fast forward, Timothy B. Lee, a tech journalist, who paints a convincing scenario in which Bitcoin nodes band together to seize control of the network, becoming the equivalent of online banks as they provide transaction services to everyone else. And those banks get together to regulate the supply of money. Well, that's where the central banks come from. The fact is, this whole idea of Silk Road, or alternatively other black markets that libertarians believe in, meaning ones not connected to the formal economy, as being ones that can outcompete the government is just simply ridiculous. Individualist anarchists like Lysander Spooner believe that if we just have an economy of small producers or even worker collectives, that somehow these efforts can undermine the power of big capital. I mean, just the thought of that is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, if you have a small worker collective of even maybe even 100 people, you cannot outcompete Walmart. It's literally impossible. The only choice for these people is to exploit themselves. In other words, it's no longer the capitalist exploiting the worker, but the worker exploiting himself, which admittedly is a lot more palatable than being exploited by a capitalist. But in the end, their power to exploit is nowhere near the capabilities of something like Walmart, which can exploit tens of millions of people, if not a billion people. And that's the point. The capital concentrated into these large firms are well beyond the capacity for some small producer or even an individual producer can compete with. It's just immeasurably different. It's like taking the capitalist power and you're putting a huge amount of power into one company's hands and putting all these small ones around it that have virtually no power at all and expecting them to be able to compete. It's just not going to happen. If people are always going to respond to their rational economic interests, why the hell would they pay 5-7 times as much for something from a collective, a workers' cooperative, or even a small producer than they're going to from Walmart? There's a reason why Walmart dominates the market in just about everywhere else. There is a reason why Walmart has put tens of thousands, if not millions, of small producers out of business already. We've already seen this phenomenon. This is a lot like the libertarian claims that if we all get 3D printers, we're all going to be able to walk off into the woods and be able to just outcompete the large capitalist firms, which makes no sense. And they're all going to take these 3D printers and, exchange with each other goods, which has so many flaws in it. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like, for example, I'm going to print a wrench and then I'm going to sell it to you. If I have a 3D printer myself, why the hell would I buy a wrench from you? I'll just print my own. There you go. The entire act of exchange is stopped. And there's a lot of other problems too that goes into 3D printing, like the fact it takes forever to print even small things, and that this is not efficient because the production process, the time of production is just way too long. There's tons of other questions to ask, like the use of electricity or where you get the raw materials to use in the 3D printers from. But again, all of that is a whole separate video on why 3D printers aren't going to change anything. The point here is that a small producer, regardless of how many of them, do not have the capital necessary to take on very large corporations. like Walmart. You can have as many small producers in an economy as you want, but they essentially can't win because they are still connected to that market mechanism. Now, some people could argue that that's the point of Bitcoin, is to get outside of that official market. Well, we see exactly what happens. It can't compete. Bitcoin will never have any inherent real value as much as any currency can because nobody trusts it, because you can't use it for anything. Even PayPal basically told Bitcoin to take a hike. We don't want anything to do with you. We're not going to exchange anything that you have with cash. They're not going to deal with it. Well, that's the whole point. These alternative means of stepping outside the system in order to compete with the system doesn't work. You can't just sidestep the entire system and then create a new one within it. It doesn't work. The market mechanism alone would prevent that from happening. You can't sidestep the need for a revolution. If you want to change the entire system, you're going to have to actually confront that system and change it through whatever means you feel is necessary. You're not going to be able to just step around it with some kind of alternative means. There's a reason why the state has a monopoly on force. To answer another question, why was Silk Road shut down? Well, basically because it was breaking the law. It was facilitating the exchange of illegal products and illegal services, including the use of hitmen. Despite any claims of a conspiracy against libertarians, genuinely the site was just breaking the law, and that's why it was shut down. Whether or not you agree with the law is another matter, but that is the reason why it was shut down. And to just give a little bit more information on Bitcoin here, I've included a link in the description that has a list of some of the most famous scams and frauds that took place with Bitcoin. The thing to remember here is that both Silk Road and Bitcoin are not a solution to the system. If you are against the system and you want to change it, stepping around it is not going to work. You are going to have to confront that system. You can't simply just choose to not participate in it or not agree. I mean, you can just leave the country and not participate in it, but in the end, that system still remains. It is not an actual challenge to the system whatsoever. Bitcoin, Silk Road, black markets are no threat to the state whatsoever. If you truly believe that the state is the enemy, then you should fight the state in whatever means you feel is necessary to do so. The point is, you're not going to be able to step around it. You have to actually confront it. Thank you for watching. Go ahead, rate, comment, subscribe, share on various social media. And if you want, there's some other great content here you could check out.